Hello there, Eric here at Fort Auto Sales in Tofield, Alberta, and in this video I'm going to go over the differences between all the Dodge manual transmissions, which would be the G360, the NV4500, the NV5600, and the G56. I'm going to cover the weight, what it's like to swap between each one of them, length differences, and anything else I can kind of think up as we go here. Before we continue the video, please consider subscribing to the channel for more Dodge related content, and if you enjoy a video like this, please drop a comment or a like below. Anyways, without further ado, let's dig right into it. So we'll start off with Grandpa here, the GetRag G360. You can know that it's a GetRag pretty easily by it tells you to get a rag because they leak. Notable things about these, they came in 89 to 93 first gen Dodges. They will bolt in other applications. I don't really know why you'd want to do it, but so long as you had the thinner adapter plate from the first gen, it should bolt on and work on any other Dodge engine offered all the way to 2019. After 2019, I'm not too sure. If you're looking at a bell housing, the main thing is that they have a different kind of style slave setup where the slave mounts on this side versus the NV4500, the slave cylinder mounts on the back side here. So these transmissions are probably one of the weakest 5-speeds offered behind the Cummins, or manual transmissions, I mean, and they're known for bending the forks inside the shift tower, which are these. They're pretty weak, as well as because they have no nylon riders or anything like that. If they're ran hot or low on oil, it's pretty common to burn them out and wreck them. Gear ratios are pretty similar to an NV4500. I'll post all the different gear ratios of every transmission near the end of the video here, so you can have a good kind of comparison, and you know, it gives you a good idea. I would measure this one. Unfortunately, it's two-wheel drive, and all the other transmissions I'm going to be measuring are going to be 4x4 transmissions here, and there's not enough two-wheel drive versions of these transmissions to get a definitive measurement of all of them. So I won't measure this one. However, from what I've heard from going to a NV4500 from a GetRag 360, people have reused the same drive shafts, so it's got to be within like an inch from the G360 to the NV4500. Yeah, we'll move on to the NV4500 now. Probably one of the most common manual transmissions offered behind the 12-valve and 24-valve engines is the NV4500. This was ran from 1994 up to 2003 in a few select applications of a common rail 5.9 trucks. They are generally regarded as a pretty stout trans. They are a 5-speed with overdrive, a pretty low first gear. My main complaint about them is the 3 to 4 drop is about 1,000 RPM drop. But otherwise, there's not very many flaws with them. There's the besides the 5th gear nut, which backs off on the back, which you'll just lose 5th, and you have to pull the overdrive housing off, and you can put a 5th gear fixed nut on it, or tighten it up a little bit more. The 3rd gear is weak in them. When you kind of get above 550 horsepower, that's about kind of the limit of these transmissions. As far as year-to-year differences, 1994 to 1997 have a round top shift tower like so, and in the event that you have to pull the shifter off, the stick just pulls right off, and then it has kind of a hex that sticks out and a little collar thing that sits inside here, like so, and you have to push down and then counterclockwise, and that releases it. And it's a pain in the ass to get out of here sometimes. This one's, I think, is from a GM application. But otherwise, there's a little internal difference. I think they have a different reverse gear or reverse idler gear. But not a whole lot difference between the 98 to 02 transmissions. They all have an 1.25 inch input shaft on them, which is the same size input as the G360 does. I'll just do a quick measurement of the overall length here for you. So I'm going to put this on the back, nice and flush. Here's the length from the back where the transfer case mounts to the front here. Looks like to be about 25 1/4. Some interchange notes with the GM transmissions. So if you get a GM NV4500, some may have the square top on them. You're going to want a later model internal slave GM NV4500, as they have the same case, same internal gears, the main shaft different, and the overdrive housing's different, and the input's different. But the big thing is that the case is the same as the Dodge models. The internal slave ones will have just a kind of aluminum flush round piece on the front. Then the earlier external slave NV4500s for the GM have a smaller pilot hole in the case. So if you try to put a Dodge input and tail housing and convert it all to a Dodge application, then you're going to have some trouble there. I have a buddy who has bored out the case to allow the use of the Dodge input shaft, but just to save yourself the work, just try to find a late model internal slave one or a proper Dodge NV4500. Some of the little NV4500 facts is for upgrades, you can get an 1 3/8" input shaft. You can get a full spline main shaft, which has, for the 5th gear in the back, you have typically only engaged with half the splines. The full spline main fully splines it. It's kind of like whether it makes a difference or not, it's up for debate. Rarely you'll ever see a broken main shaft. Usually you might see the odd broken input here and there from very abused trucks. You can put in different synchros. Some of these have brass synchros, and I prefer to go with the carbon synchros. You can put a short shifter on them as well. To my knowledge, nobody else offers any sort of upgraded gears or anything like that. You can cryo the gears, but it's pretty debatable on whether it does anything to these or not. For a sled pulling application, typically the combo people will use is a 1 3/8" input, and then just run the transmission in 4th gear, since that's direct, and they work pretty good like that. Here we've got the G56 6-speed transmission. This was offered from 2005 up to 2018 or 19. I can't quite remember when they got rid of the manual in the 4th gens there. Anyways, there's 2 versions of this transmission. There is the AD, which is the early version behind the 5.9s, and the AE, which is the later version that came behind the 6.7s. You can identify this from the tag if it is not destroyed on the side here, like both of these transmissions, or if you pull the input shaft retainer off. On the input shaft, you'll have 2 lines. I think it's one line for AE and 2 lines for an AD. I'm pretty sure you have more lines on the later model. The early 5.9 version has higher gear ratios, so on the highway, putting it in 6th gear, you'll turn more RPM with the early 5.9 trans than you will with the later 6.7 trans. They are physically the same, it's just the internals are different, and you can't just swap the gear over from overdrive in the early model to the later one. It doesn't work like that. Countershafts all different. These actually weigh the exact same amount as the NV4500 because of their all aluminum construction. Generally, they can hold about like 700 horsepower fairly reliably. Once you kind of get above that, their longevity is kind of hit and miss. They twist the case. They're common to break the ears off as well if you're not careful when you snug them up. They shipped awesome. I really like how they shipped, and I'll be putting one behind a 12 valve for a future video. If it's not already out when you're watching this, please check the channel for that video. They have a pretty expensive and specific shift tower where all the detents and everything are built into it. One fatal flaw of them is, where is it? Right here. This little sidebar is for reverse, and those welds are known to snap and drop that ball and the piece inside the trans. So if you have one and you don't plan on selling anytime soon, get a little buddy with a TIG welder to put a little tack weld on there and save you from disaster. For swapping these into, let's say you wanted to put into a 2nd gen 12 valve or 24 valve truck, you need, of course, different drive shafts, a transfer case with a 29 spline output, which NP241, 271, 273, it all bolts to it. Hydros are the same between all the 94 to present day trucks. I mean, there's a little bit specific differences, but they all bolt up. Like say G56 and NV5600, they use the same hydros as the NV4500 as well. There is some different push rod length in early 94 to 97 trucks and third gen applications and second gen applications, but that's getting too far into specifics here. If you're going to put this in a second gen, you need a longer transfer case shift rod. Third gen, I'm not too versed in them, but you'll need pedals with all manual swap applications, unless you have, say, a NV5600 truck or NV4500 truck and you're putting this in, then the pedals are all the same. The third gen pedals also bolt into the fourth gen trucks as well. They're the same. What else is there? For the clutch, these had a dual mass clutch, and it's common to go to a single mass conversion, which uses a clutch from an NV5600 truck. And if you're gonna do that, you need a flywheel spacer, which you can get from Valair, and that's what I'll be using with my swap there. Or you just have to get a G56 specific clutch, they're pretty well identical to the NV5600 clutches and the big input NV4500 clutches, other than just having to be spaced out a little bit more. You will not use a starter spacer with this transmission with a dual disc or single disc, versus a NV5600 truck will use a starter spacer. The input shaft is 1 3/8 inches, and I don't really see too often where they break. For upgrades to the G56, Lazar Smith offers a girdle for the outside of it, but then some other people say that they don't run the girdle and it doesn't make much of a difference. I think maybe Superstick Transmissions offers a custom gear set for these transmissions as well. And I think you can get a billet input shaft, but otherwise there isn't too much. Here is the length of the G56 from the front of the bell housing to the back of the trans where the transfer case bolts to. It is approximately 28 3/4, just a hair over there. This 400-pound gorilla here is the NV5600. It was offered from 1999 up to 2005 in second gen and third gen trucks. They will take about 800 to 1,000 horsepower. 1,000 is kind of the upper limit. They are just a monster, like sturdy, really good gear ratios. One of my more favorite transmissions out of all these. The only downside is they're freaking heavy, but with a diesel pickup truck, you generally don't care. Big differences, the 1999 ones had an 1 1/4 inch input shaft. These later ones have an 1 3/8 inches. And the 1 1/4 inch input shaft transmissions have a totally different gear set inside them. Generally just avoid them if you can, and try and find an 1 3/8 inches one, but it is good if you're doing a NV4500 to 6-speed swap where you can just reuse your same clutch. I like to run mine with Redline MTL transmission fluid. It works pretty good. The notable failures on them is if you don't overfill it by extra liter of fluid or get it low on fluid, then the rear bearing will burn out in the case and it can destroy the case. What else? The pilot bearings can go in the clutch. That's kind of a give for any of these transmissions. You can break 6 with a ton of power. Not much to note. They're just generally a really good transmission, and nice and sturdy. If you wanted to, say, have a 12 valve and you wanted to put this transmission behind a 12 valve, it bolts up to the same trans adapter. You use the 1 3/8 splined clutch from the 6-speed with a 13-inch flywheel. You need a starter spacer because the ring gear is larger on the 6-speed clutch. And then when you bolt your transfer case to it, you need a longer transfer case shift lever rod. And then in the 94 to 97 trucks, you need to make a custom mount on the side for your 4x4 shifter, as the in those years they're bolted to the transmission. I can't really think of anything else. I think that's about everything. Length of NV5600 from front of bell housing flange to the back where the transfer case bolts to is approximately 31.5 inches. As far as upgrades go for these, I don't believe anyone makes any sort of aftermarket gears. You might be able to buy like a billet inputter or something like that. You can get a short shifter. The best one is a core Hurst shifter for it. But yeah, otherwise, nothing else. Well, that's it for the video. I hope that you were able to learn a thing or two about the Cummins manual transmissions and how to hot rod them, and possibly pick what one might work best for your swap, or even an upgrade if you have an automatic or even a 5-speed wanting to go to a 6-speed. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel and check out my other videos. In the future, I will be doing a G56 swap. I also have a 68 Nova. I'm doing a Duramax and a 5-speed NV4500 in. And then I have a tube chassis Dart with a 6.7 Cummins and this Bruno Lenkel that's going to go in that as well. So I've got a couple cool things planned. If you like manuals and diesels, I'm your man. I also got some manual valve body stuff I'll be working on as well. Anyways, I could ramble on and on. Appreciate the watch. Let me know if you have any other questions or if I missed something, or even if you've noticed other cool kind of hot rod manual transmission things I might have missed. That's all for today, and thanks for watching. I'll see you later.